listeners, to the BizBlend podcast, where business isn't just a buzzword, it is a living, breathing blend of mindset, mission, and market moves. I'm your host, and as always, and today we are diving into one of the most frustrating blind spots in business. Why most companies don't actually know what their customers are buying, even when they think they do. And listeners, our guest today is someone who's been on the front lines of this mystery for decades, Sean Shannon. From leading powerhouse sales teams at iHeart and Cumulus Media to building iconic radio brands in Atlanta, Sean's been mastering the art of market making before it became a LinkedIn headline. But listeners, here's the twist. Sean isn't here to pitch perfect solutions. He's here to challenge the way we diagnose the real problems in sales and marketing. So, if you have ever wondered why your campaigns aren't converting or why customers say one thing and do another, this one's for you. So, let's get into it. So, Sean, welcome to the show, and I'm really, really excited for you to have here with us.
Thanks, Anna. It's great to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful. Sean, let's cut right to it. Why do you believe most businesses have no clue what their customers are actually buying?
You know, it's the question actually comes from Peter Drucker,
Mm.
who wrote back in the late 80s that the vast majority of businesses have no idea what their customers are buying. They know what they're selling them, but they don't know what's motivating that purchase.
Mhm.
And another one of my favorite business thinkers, Clayton Christensen from the Harvard Business School, came up with this idea of jobs theory, and it goes like this: is that we don't necessarily buy products or services as much as we hire them to do very specific jobs in our lives. And if we can untangle that job that somebody's hiring our service or our product to do, we've untangled innovation and marketing and, quite frankly, even operations all at the same time.
Mm. Hmm. And Sean, I have seen brands, their offices over features instead of outcomes, like how many new features we can add or how we can jump on to the latest bandwagon of trends. For example, very common yet strikingly, it's everywhere. Every product, every service, every software right now, AI. Everywhere is AI. Whether it's necessary or not, there has to be AI because that's what is generating the or attracting the eyes and attention. And somehow that emotional or functional need behind the transaction is missing. So, how does your approach challenge that surface level thinking?
Well, I like to think about when I sit down with a client and we're trying to tease out how we should approach our marketing. I like to tease out what are the benefits that the consumer is seeking when they purchase this product. And I have a little exercise that I'll walk them through. Most businesses will identify their target in one of two ways. One is just simply what product are they buying, right? Are they buy? If I'm working with an HVAC company, is this a service customer? Is this a replacement customer? Are they a contractor that's in new installs, right? So that they identify the target customer by the product they buy, or they identify them by some demographic measure, age, gender, right? Because those are the two most observable ways that they can identify who's purchasing the product. And if we turn that on its head and say, well, can we group consumers together that are gaining the same benefit from the product? So the exercise I walk them through is a McDonald's, and we look at three target customers, and what they purchased, what context they purchased it in, what benefits they were getting from the product, and then I have them guess at the age and gender. And so the first target bought a cheeseburger, a fries, and a Coke. Context is it's 11:30. We're at the drive-through, and our target's wearing a Carhartt jacket, driving a Ford F-150.
Mhm.
Benefits he's getting from that, or she's getting from that. are it's quick, it's salty, it's filling, it's convenient, and it's cheap, right? And I don't know if McDonald's is good or bad, but it's always the same no matter where you go. Target 2 goes to a McDonald's and buys a cheeseburger, fries, and a Coke, except this time the Target is sitting outside the playland where the kids are playing in the P-balls and they're reading a magazine. So what benefits is this consumer getting from that cheeseburger? They're getting peace and quiet. They've had happy kids since the moment they told them they're gonna go to the McDonald's. You know, it's cheap, and right? So and then we go to Target 3 buys a cheeseburger, fries, and a Coke, but we're back at the drive-through. They're driving a Honda Odyssey. They've got 6 girls in soccer fit uniforms, 12 years old, in the back seat. What benefits are they getting? Well, quick is important because they're moving from activity to activity. Cheap is really important because 5 of those kids are not their own. Menu variety becomes important because 12-year-old girls are beginning to individuate themselves, right? So when we go to guess the age and gender, most people guess that target one's a male between 30 and 40, and that's exactly right. It's a 36-year-old male. Most people guess that target 2 is a woman in her early 40s. No, it's a 36-year-old male. And most people guess that target 3 is a male somewhere male or female somewhere in their early 40s, and it's a 36-year-old male. And the point of the exercise is that the very same consumer, that 36-year-old male, was the same person who bought the same product and found entirely different benefit sets from those cheeseburger, fries, and Cokes. So if you do this kind of exercise inside of a business and begin to say, hey, what consumers are looking for this to be quick and salty and filling and buying it at lunch? That becomes one set of targets. And as I worked in radio for as long as I did, McDonald's sent us 15 different pieces of copy to run at different times of the day and different days of the week so that they could talk specifically to those consumers about what was motivating the purchase of that cheeseburger and fries and Coke for them.
Um, and how does it differ from, let's say in marketing when we go, start with the first phase, understanding the target audience or the TG, we, take help of market surveys, building customer persona, or somebody who is um, discovering the brand or the product or the service for the first time, uh, what they're expecting or how they're coming to that. I mean, how different is serving that from creating these target customers and identifying their behaviors, their needs.
It's the difference sort of between building your target from the top down versus the bottom up. So instead of going out and searching for millions of people that I think are interested in my product, let me begin to try and identify specific consumers
Mm.
and figure out what are they hiring my product to do for them. So, as an example, I was working with a fractional HR consultant. And, she's out and what she's selling is help with payroll, help with benefits, help with HR, right? But
Uh-huh.
when we started to talk about, well, what led people to actually call her? Well, a good number of those people, it was a dumpster fire in terms of compliance. The government had changed compliance and they needed somebody to come help them get all of their compliance documentation done. Another one had a dumpster fire in terms of a lawsuit that was possible with an employee that was leaving, right?
Mhm.
And, third one, dumpster fire with a harassment lawsuit. So what we determined is that she's not selling HR services, she's selling fire person services. She's a dumpster fireman. And if it
Mm.
and as she began to go to market thinking that way, she was much more, able to differentiate herself from other folks out in the market because she was speaking specifically to the issues that led that person to say, "I need someone to fix this."
Mhm. Mm. Yeah, that makes it clear, Sean. And you know some products or services are there to solve problems. That's where the diagnosis comes into picture. But then there is something which sometimes it disrupts the market. So what makes that difference in there?
Rephrase the question for me.
Yeah, sure. So there are products and services which are out there solving problems, like putting out fires, as you gave in the example. But then there are products and services which are kind of disrupting an entire category. They are like category creators or subcategory creators, where there's an extra effort in first, spreading the awareness to the people out there. So what's the difference in there? In terms of, sales.
Well, if I'm understanding the question correctly, i-
Mhm.
is if you are attempting to disrupt a market,
Mhm.
you are actually creating a problem that has not previously existed, or you're
Right.
redefining
Yeah.
a problem in massively different terms. I think about when Steve Jobs launched the iPhone. He created a market that wasn't there. Nobody woke up one morning and said, "Gosh, I wish that I had a personal computer in my hand that I could carry around and use a touchscreen for." Um,
Exactly.
the famous quote is that Steve Jobs was asked, "What sort of market research do you do around products?" And he said, "None." Right? Because we are creating products for problems that consumers don't know they have until we create the product.
Mm.
So I'll say this, that as I work with quite a few fractional professionals like myself, and this is a relatively new market.
Mhm.
Nobody woke up one morning and said, "Gee, I wish I had somebody that I could hire fractionally to lead my sales team."
Mm. Mm.
Necessity created that need. Either a business owner grew to a point where he couldn't handle his salespeople himself, but he didn't have enough money to hire a full-time sales manager. So, you know, here's a solution that might work, right? So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but when it comes to market disruption, if you're creating a product that does not have a problem, the first thing you need to do is ask yourself, what substitutes are people using to get around my problem?
Mm. No, you got it right, Sham. You got it right. That and
Right.
obviously, you gave such a good example. I think that absolutely makes it clear. And now, if we try to understand the status quo when it comes to sales teams, as you explained in the beginning, that you emphasize on diagnosing before prescribing in sales. Now, why do you think so many sales teams they skip this and they just jump straight to selling? I mean, I'll be very frank. I mean, I have had my good time in sales. It's like, okay, you got the product, you understood the features, just call, just talk to them, try to sell. That's it, done.
So I will. What I'm talking about very specifically in terms of sales is a B2B solution sale. So,
Yeah.
if I'm out selling a copier, there's a minor amount of discovery that I'm going to need to do. But I have a pretty good idea of the problem I'm solving for this person, which is that they want to get as many copies as for as cheap as they can, right?
Mhm.
But if I'm selling a true solution, how do I know what I'm selling until I know what the client is buying? How do I know? I'll give an example. So we sold marketing services in my past career. So we'd go into small and medium-sized businesses, and we had a suite of digital solutions and audio solutions and video solutions, ways for them to reach audiences. And
Mhm.
I would say to my salespeople, until you know what that client is trying to accomplish with their marketing dollars, how can you offer them the best solution?
Mhm.
Your discovery call needs to uncover not the first problem, but the largest problem that you can solve. I had
Mhm.
salespeople that were stepping over 50 and $100,000 opportunities because a $2,500 problem was the first thing that popped up, which led me to say, yeah, I would tell my salespeople, I can tell you to the minute and a second that the average discovery call goes. And they would, I would say, take a guess, and they would throw numbers out, 4 minutes and 30 seconds, 10 minutes and 20 seconds. I said, no, the discovery call lasts until the minute and the second that the customer says something around something you can sell, and you stop asking questions and you start selling. We built out what we call the 6-question discovery call, which was actually 6 large areas that we wanted to understand about a business before we ever provided a solution. We wanted to know the backstory on the business, how it got started, what the industry looks like, what are the competitors look like in there, what does their target customer look like, what benefits are they seeking. We wanted to understand what metrics they were going to use to measure the campaign, what were the metrics that were most important in terms of return on investment, what past marketing efforts did they do, and what worked and didn't, and why. And then lastly, what was the decision-making process on products like ours, right?
Mm.
So it was, quite honestly, there I had a form that was about 54 questions long, 40 of which we could answer ourselves by just going to the internet. So, but you had a good strong 12 to 14 questions that you really wanted to probe the client with, so that we could come back and customize a solution around the problem they were trying to solve that was the biggest that we could find.
Mm. And especially Sean in sales teams, I believe the more we connect with customers, we work on ground. We Even if we are not there with an intention of closing it, at least we can have a conversation, we can actually understand the problem. For example, um, specifically in B2B sales, like let's say we are giving a product demo or a service demo, we are trying to understand what the client expectations and needs are. Then at least we get to understand, okay, they need this. Okay, let me see if my product or my service is solving this problem or not. I mean,
Yes.
what's your view on this?
Well, this is my thought, is that I want to have a holistic understanding of this business and the industry that they're competing in, so that I can understand where my product and my solution fits in. I'll give an example. I mean, one of the most powerful questions you can ask with a new client or an existing client is, what's keeping you up at night? And we were sitting with a HVAC company, and
Yeah.
sitting with the owner, and our intention was to go in and sell them a radio campaign telling people that they when their AC crapped out, they needed to call this person. And I
Okay.
asked the question, I said, "So what's keeping you up at night?" And he said, "Quite honestly, hiring techs. I don't have enough techs to cover the calls I've got." And I said, "Well, then why are you talking to us about creating more calls?" And he said, "I know. I've been wondering that myself." And I said, "What if we ran a recruitment campaign?" And sure enough, 2 months later, we had hired 12 techs for this guy off of a recruitment campaign that we sold him,
Hmm.
right? It's understanding holistically what's going on in this person's world, and how can you be a part of either selling them the solution or connecting them to somebody who can sell the solution.
Hmm. And does this work in cold calls, Sean? Like, let's say for the first time, I'm connecting with, let's say, a CEO or a CTO of a enterprise company, or with, let's say, an SME as well. Let's say for an IT service based startup I'm working for, and I'm doing a cold call. I'm connecting with them for the first time. I uh, do you suggest to jump onto this aspect in the first call itself?
Well, not on the cold call, but in the discovery call. On the cold call, what I coach my salespeople to do is that your initial communications with the customer or the prospective client need to center around what I call the anticipated point of pain.
Okay.
I haven't had the opportunity to ask what's keeping this person up at night, but I am asking the question myself, what do I think is keeping them up at night? So
Hmm.
my cold call, as an example, if I'm calling a CTO, and I am selling a managed service a managed service provider's product, and it's the CTO at a mid-sized company. I might start my cold call by saying, "Hey, if you're a lot like a number of my other clients, I'm guessing that you're having a challenge scaling the IT services with your existing staff. Love to set up 15 minutes, show you ways that we've helped companies just like you scale to the size you need without adding personnel."
Hmm.
Right? So start with what you think what you think might be keeping that person up at night when it comes to what it is you can help solve.
That is that is actually great. That's actually great, Sean. And I think that also needs a lot of not a lot of, but at least a minimal amount of homework to be done. Around the industry, around the company, around. In fact, the person whom I'm calling, the lead who I'm calling, definitely needs a homework. And I think that's where the difference comes between quantity and quality. I mean, at one point of time, Sean, I'll be very honest, my approach was, okay, let's just call 100 or 200, this entire list of numbers. I expect that at least, um, 20 to 25 people will pick my call. And out of those 25, at least, I'll get to have some kind of meeting fixed with, let's say, 5 or 10 people out of that.
Well, if you're really good, you'll get that many. The law of large numbers does work. You know,
Mhm.
for every 100 times you cast the net out, you're probably gonna get one sale. In terms of and I'm talking about full cycle, from, uh, throwing out a cold call to walking somebody through the sales process and then closing that sale. You're gonna have to throw that net out 100 times on the very front end to get one on the back end. They're pretty steady numbers. So for every 100 people I call, on average, I'll probably get in front of 10 people. Out
Mhm.
of those 10 people, I'll probably present to 6 of them, and out of those 6, I'll probably close 1 or 2.
Yeah.
And it's been amazing from industry to industry to industry. Those numbers are about the same, in the B2B space. Now, the more experienced you get, the lower the law of large numbers gets because you're now working with referrals and warm leads. But what I'm talking about in that situation is completely cold leads,
Mm. Yeah.
right? So when I bring a rookie in, I'd say, take what you think you need to do in terms of outreach and multiply it times 10, and you're probably getting close to what you need to do.
Yeah.
But I'll give you the other trick that I would use.
Mhm.
Let's say you're sitting down to call 25 people
Okay.
that you think are good prospects that you want to have a conversation with.
Okay.
Rank them from 1 through 25 in terms of the quality. In other words, what's the potential with this client?
Mm.
Most valuable to least valuable, however you want to rank them. But give them a number from 1 to 25. And as you start your cold calling, flip it upside down and start with 25 and work to 1. Because every single day when I start making phone calls, I'm clumsy. And specifically, if I'm working maybe in a new vertical, I haven't quite perfected myself. So I want to get my crummy throws, my crummy pitches out before I get to my very best customers. Because by the time I get to that 25th call, I'm pretty good. I'm I'm pretty smooth, right? I've gotten the hitches out.
Hmm. And this is similar to in CRMs that we create our list of hot leads, warm leads, and cold leads,
Yes.
and yeah, I actually love that approach. I mean that really it kind of sets a very streamlined way of like revisiting my entire list of people to call or follow up.
Yes, and I think the other thing that we underestimate is the frequency with which we need to make contact with a completely cold lead.
Yeah.
W
Yeah,
you know
that one.
Yeah, you have salespeople that are sending an email once a week, making a phone call once every other week, and they're never getting above the noise of that person's inbox, of that person's life. And what I would tell my salespeople is I'd say, "Listen, in the B2B space, what you need to do is platoon your lead, your prospects. And so you grab 25 or 50 prospects, and you're gonna put a really intense campaign in place for 3 weeks." The folks at SalesLoft did a study across thousands of businesses, and found that in the B2B space, an initial contact required somewhere between 16 and 18 touches in a 3-week span of time. That was
Mm,
that created the necessary, signal to get out of the noise of what was going on in that B2B inbox. So a touch could include a LinkedIn Connect request, an in-mail, an email, a voicemail, a video email, a stop by, a snail mail card, but make sure that you're doing it in this compressed period of time so that you become that one person that they have gotten a voicemail from, seen an email from, a LinkedIn request, another email, a video email, and they literally have to say, "This person is not going away until I tell them, 'Yes, come see me,' or 'Don't contact me.'" Which gets to another thing, which is there are
yeah.
only 3 answers you're gonna get, in a sales call. You're gonna get a yes, you're gonna get a no, or you're gonna get a maybe. Yes is the best, no is the second best, and maybe is hell.
That is good.
So
That is, I agree with you.
right? And so I would tell my salespeople, "Listen, for me, closing is not getting a yes on a contract. Closing is getting a yes or no and closing the sales cycle." So
Hmm.
I would much rather get no's than people who are continuing me along. Because generally speaking, if I have sat down with a client, done a discovery call, and come back with a solution with them for them, they're gonna say no for one of really 3 big reasons. They're gonna say no because I did not nail what their problem was. They're gonna say no because they think my solution's too expensive. Or they're
Mm,
gonna say maybe because another problem, another fire just erupted for them.
okay.
And my solution, though they like it, is not what's the number one thing on their list to get done that day.
Yeah.
And so I would rather get them to tell me, "No, actually, I'm trying to hire 12 techs." Because now I have an opportunity to say, "Hey, let me help you hire those 12 techs."
Mm. And there's also a factor of seasonality, and most of the maybes I used to get, in the financial year closing, that okay, we'll look into this in the next financial year, not right now. I like your service. I'll go by the code, but then we'll get into this in the next financial year. So I think that's where also there's a lot of it kind of the pipeline kind of gets stuck. At,
Yes. And so here's, this comes from, Neil Rackham, who wrote a book called Spin Selling. It's one of 2 books I recommend any person that's getting into sales to read. It's dry. He's not a sales guy, he's a researcher. And he defined that there's gonna be one of 2 outcomes from a sales call. There's either gonna be an advance. I wanna be specific here. If you're not getting a yes or a no to your solution, one of 2 things is gonna happen. You're gonna get an advance or a continuation. "Hey, well, we're at the end of our year, and we're working on our budgets, and we'll get back to you." That's a continuation. Those are lots of nice words, and you feel good, and you come back and you tell your sales manager, "Yeah, they really like the solution. They're in the middle of their budgets, and they're gonna get back to me." Right? And I would I absolutely hated hearing that as a sales manager. I really did. It just killed me.
Before we conclude, um, if our listeners, one thing which I guess we missed is the AI and automation part. So before we wrap up, a quick viewpoint I would love to know from you. So since there's rise of AI and then automation in sales, I mean, do you think we are getting closer to truly understanding the customer, or it's just another automation or kind of automating the misunderstanding?
So I'll say this is that
Mhm.
I don't think AI is going to help us understand the customer without being prompted by very smart marketing and salespeople.
Mhm.
The insights come from observations, and the one thing AI has a difficult time doing is observing us in our daily lives. And
Mhm.
AI is never going to replace the value of a great discovery call. It's never going to replace the value of a trusted partnership. But I tell you what it will what I'm seeing it already do is do an incredibly effective job on the front end of the sales cycle, where you can create an SDR agent that,
Yeah.
based on the inputs you give it, will go out and scrape LinkedIn for particular decision makers that you are looking for, gather up all of their contact information that's on LinkedIn and not on LinkedIn, and then begin to serve them a drip campaign of messages from you telling them to call you about the problem that you've identified, that anticipated point of pain. And, so if I am an SDR
Mhm.
who is sitting in a phone center making phone calls all day, I might think about upgrading my skill set
Hmm.
to become a true BDR that's actually getting out in front of clients and seeing them. Because as the most of the functions that an SDR are doing are going to get replaced to a greater or less extent by AI. What's
Mm.
not going to get replaced by AI is belly to belly discovery call, uh,
Mhm.
human connection and human understanding of what's going on inside of that business.
Exactly. Exactly. You hit the nail. You hit the nail, Sean.
Thank you.
Oh, brilliant. So if our listeners they would like to connect with you and explore more about the work you are doing, and they would also like to share their thoughts and opinions on this, what will be the best way?
Easiest way is to find me on LinkedIn. Sean Shannon, Sales Acceleration. You'll see me pop right up. You can text me 206-321-8362. I'm currently working on a revamp of my website, so strategicgrowthdesign.com. Don't be surprised if you ping me in the next week or two that you get a 404 error, but that'll be going away very quickly.
Yeah. Brilliant, brilliant. That's really great. And I'll make sure to mention all the links in the show notes for our listeners. And Sean, this was golden because I believe you brought a flashlight to the blind spots we often unintentionally or intentionally ignore. Whether it's about diagnosing the real pain to admitting what we don't know, I believe your perspective, it reminds us that effective business, it isn't about slick pitches.
No.
It's about real human connection, enhanced, strengthened by the benefits of AI, automation, tech, then real listening, and then real learning as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Sana.
So, to all the listeners out there, if today's conversation has sparked a light bulb within you, or maybe even a fire, go back to your last campaign or client call and ask, were you solving the right problem or just the office one? With that, we wrap up this episode of BizBlend. To connect with Sean, just refer to the show notes along with this episode. And I'm your host, Sana, and signing off from BizBlend. Thank you.